Tracing the source of stress. This is part 2 of the series. Please see the part 1 of this video in the playlist. Recognize how you react to stress. There are several indicators that you might display when you're stressed or anxious. Stress can be avoided if you know what to look for when it arises. Although everyone reacts to and experiences stress differently, you can watch for a few typical signs. Some psychological symptoms include trouble focusing, memory problems, being easily distracted, feeling less creative or decisive, worrying, or recurring unpleasant thoughts. Some emotional symptoms include crying, irritation, mood swings, strange feelings for you, defensiveness, feeling unmotivated or wanting to put off things, poor confidence or low self-esteem, frustration, feeling jittery or anxious, and uncharacteristic aggression or rage. Aches and pains, a weakened immune system, changes in weight or sleep, panic episodes, weariness or fatigue, and a change in sex drive are examples of physical symptoms. Behavioral symptoms may include forgetfulness, self-neglect, social withdrawal, sleep difficulties, interpersonal issues, poor time management, low self-motivation, and use of alcohol, nicotine, or drugs as a coping mechanism. Determine the origin of your stress. Which of these two things, the presentation you have to make to your boss this afternoon, or the fact that someone just cut you off on the freeway, has your heart racing? Find out what is truly upsetting you by giving it some thought. You can list several things on a piece of paper and then rank them if that helps. Among the typical stressors are family. You can become really stressed out by disagreements with your parents, loved ones, or your romantic partner. Work or school. You can experience pressure to deliver, fulfill deadlines, or complete certain tasks. You can also experience stress related to making important decisions or juggling work and personal obligations. Personal. These sources may be very powerful. You might be concerned with feeling good enough. You can be under a lot of stress because of your relationships, your health issues, or your financial situation. Additionally, you can be lacking in free time or feeling lonely or bored. Recognize your position. It's possible that tension has been so ingrained in how you see yourself that you aren't even aware of how constrained you have become. Take a step back and think about your perspective on stress. Do you frequently experience tension, even if it always seems to be fleeting? To explain your stress, you can say something like, "It's just been so stressful at work this week." However, if you frequently experience this stress, it is possible that the cause is more significant than a one-time bump. Do you consider stress to be a characteristic or normal aspect of your life? For instance, you may believe that my entire family is a worrywart. That's just how we are, or I just live a stressful life, that's all. It may seem impossible to manage your stress if you adopt this way of thinking. Do you believe that people are to blame for or accountable for your stress? For instance, rather than your procrastination, you can attribute your nervousness about a college essay to the instructor's high expectations. This may prevent you from altering your behavior to relieve your stress. Identify whether you are worrying about a former event. Sometimes our fixation on the past might become so intense that it stresses us out in the present. Although you cannot go back in time, you can react to the present and plan for the future. Rumination is an unpleasant thought pattern in which you repeatedly run a broken record loop of unfavorable thoughts. It can be recognized by the constant repetition of an incident from the past. Depression and anxiety may result from this. If you find yourself worrying about something that has already happened, take a moment to remind yourself that you cannot change the past. Ruminating is also useless, because it doesn't teach you anything about the past experience or help you solve problems for the future. You may, however, develop from it and use the lessons you learned to do better in the future. As an illustration, if you find yourself contemplating, "Why does it always include me? Just a loser here," this is not helpful and will undoubtedly stress you out. Attempt to approach your history in a more useful way. You could, for instance, look back on your previous relationships to look for patterns, such as the kinds of people you typically date, your communication preferences, or the circumstances surrounding each breakup. You might discover trends that assist you in making new plans for next relationships and in understanding what is happening. Additionally, you avoid essentializing about oneself, which will increase your motivation to make the necessary changes. Find out if you are anxious about the future. At some time, every one of us worries about the future. However, sometimes our focus on the future can become so intense that we get anxious and lose sight of the present. Although this way of thinking is unproductive, you can learn to alter it. Keep in mind that nothing is decided for the future. Catastrophe anxiety, when you foresee the worst-case scenario for any event, even little ones, is a typical sort of concern about the future. For instance, if you're anxious about an upcoming exam, you might catastrophize like follows: "I'm going to flunk the course if I don't get a good score on that examination. I might end up failing the semester. I will lose my scholarship and be unable to continue attending college if I fail the semester. I'll be forced to live in a box under a bridge, with no money and no employment." Although this is an extreme example, it shows the type of thinking that is possible. To counter this, consider the worst-case scenario that may possibly occur. The worst-case scenario, for instance, is that you actually fail out of that college and have to move back home with your parents. Then, ask yourself if you're capable of handling it. Almost always, the answer is yes. Finally, think about how likely it really is that this will happen. It's quite thin here. Failing an exam does not automatically mean failing the class, which does not automatically mean flunk out of college, etc. Another way to combat catastrophizing is to stop yourself at each conclusion and discover logical support and arguments against it. For instance, if you don't pass the exam, you might also fail the course. However, you might be able to retake the test or earn extra credit by improving your mark. Wonderful! You have now identified what to look for and the problem. Go on to have a stress relief plan on part 3 of our video.